Triangle is one of my favorite films ever, which is actually a little surprising considering how I've only watched it twice, once like 6 years ago and once a few days ago.
Oh look, grampaglasses reviewing another horror film. Really breaking the mold in terms of content, huh?
Oh look, it's Robotic Not Me Satan. Yeah, I review horror films a lot, whatevs. It's my favorite genre despite the dreck it accrues.
Well, review a different genre.
No. Just as a note before I start, if you've never seen Triangle, then I highly recommend turning off this review and going to see it, since a large part of the appeal is watching it for yourself and then seeing how other people felt about it. Gonna give you 3 seconds to click off. To start, I'm going to read from an extremely negative opinion that made me laugh. That way I can use the things introduced there as a jumping off point for how I feel about the movie. A group of passengers on a yacht are trapped in a weird Bermuda Triangle-esque warp where they're subjected to murder, terror, and multiple clones of themselves and the event they've gone through recreated over and over again. This film is pretty much a poorly written and terribly displayed mess that is really worth avoiding. Can someone please tell Melissa George to change her agent and managers if straight-to-DVD/Blu-ray crapola films such as this one are the only kind of work that she can currently get? Now, I'm not going to be one of those guys who says you're wrong about your opinion if you didn't get a film, but I am going to say she gave movies with non-traditional narratives more of a benefit of a doubt for assuming that it's terribly written and a waste of time. I mean, think about having to create a film that requires you to have the actions of multiple incarnations of the same character taken into account while still providing an interesting and entertaining film. It's not easy, which is why when a movie does pull it off, it's worth praising. Since the majority of negative opinions of this film seem to boil down to didn't get it, however, I'm going to give my 2 cents to hopefully clear up a lot of misunderstandings and to maybe allow some people to reevaluate their feelings. For those who don't know or who have forgotten, Triangle is a time loop movie that is essentially a cross between Groundhog Day and Primer. In a small subversion of typical time travel, however, any and all matter relating to the characters stuck within the time loop stays behind with each loop, with only a few specific things such as blood and food resetting whenever a new group enters the ship. This is an interesting concept, since most time loop films are just that, infinite loops with everything important resetting, but the way this loop is constructed means at some point after the events of the film, this extra matter is going to break the continuous repetition of actions. This was done on purpose, both to be a cool concept and to also relate how futile Jess's struggles are in the film. See, the whole reason this loop is even happening is because Jess can't accept that her son is dead, thus she intentionally keeps going into the loop both out of guilt and denial. It's an allegory for how we wish we can change the past even though it's impossible. To make things simple, I'm going to give a rundown of how events in the timeline played out initially, and what the end result of the Jess we follow in the film will be. In the first iteration, Jess snaps and kills her son at 8:17, which is supported by how Jess's watch and the boat's clock are stopped at that time. She then dies in a storm along with everyone on board the Triangle at 11:30, the time Greg, aka the boat captain, has on his watch. Presumably after this, Death comes and offers Jess a ride, which she then takes to the ferry and starts the infinite cycle that is presented in the movie. The Aeolus is a form of purgatory set by Death because of the promise she didn't keep. This is supported by the characters reading out the myth of Sisyphus while on the boat.
That's a pretty shitty punishment. What'd he do?
He cheated Death. Or no, he made a promise to Death that he didn't keep.
You will come back, won't you?
Yes, I promise.
Once on the ship, events play out as they're shown in the film, where she becomes hooded Jess and gets thrown off the ship. However, what a lot of people tend to miss is how the ending of the film is actually embedded within the movie itself with the character who the director calls Mean Jess. See, throughout the film after the second group arrives, there's multiple instances where it's shown that the new Jess is very different in terms of actions to the one that we follow. This is the Jess that she holds at gunpoint and lets go, who eventually kills Mean Jess and then becomes the Mean Jess who is killed. In other words, this means Jess's story has no beginning or end. No matter what she does, she'll eventually be held at gunpoint on the second go-around, become Mean Jess, and die, resetting her memories and becoming the Jess we see at the start of the film. In other words, a modern-day adaptation of Sisyphus, with some film references thrown in for good measure. Now, after saying all that, I don't think this movie is perfect. In particular, besides Jess, the other characters are uniformly They're not even terrible per se, but we see so little of them that we don't get a good grasp of who they are as people. They're just around to set the stakes and give Jess something to react to, I guess. Also, the CGI is pretty bad. Granted, it could be explained away as a representation of how the events of the film are taking place beyond reality, but it was pretty obviously a budgetary issue. Still, I find the movie far too interesting for these problems to be much of a detriment, and the movie does its very best to work around these problems with effective cinematography and good writing. It's a very underrated film, and I'm comfortable giving it an 8.5 out of 10.
Okay, but seriously, review something other than horror movies.
How about 8 horror films?
Sure, why not?